Hi, it's Chris Moore with Senior Remodeling Experts. Welcome to Aging in Place is a Team Sport. It's a video series where we talk to different providers. We explore how families, professionals, and communities can come together to help older adults live safely, comfortably, and independently at home. I'm here to guide you, connect you with the right resources, and help make the rest of your life the best of your life. Hi, it's Chris Moore with Senior Remodeling Experts, and I'm back with another episode of Aging in Place is a Team Sport, where we talk about all of the parts and pieces and providers that bring to bear to make a very successful and fulfilling aging in place experience for our clients. And I'm excited today to have Kenesha Cross, who is an occupational therapist, and she is going to tell us about the OT part of the team sport. And so welcome, Kenesha. So glad to have you.
Hi, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So tell me a little bit about what you do and explain to people what an OT is, because a lot of times people hear the term occupational therapist and they think that has to do with somebody's job or it's
Yes.
work related. And in fact, the word occupational and occupational therapist has a different meaning than a lot of people think.
Yes. I am an occupational therapist and a gerontologist, so just specializing primarily in the aging population, which is usually 65 and up. And as far as occupational therapy goes, we do not work on maintaining your occupation, your job, as far as whether you're a banker or such, but we do work on increasing your independence in the sense of activities of daily living. So you will regain your abilities to, for example, bathe yourself, dress yourself. We work on improving your strength and balance so you don't have falls. And also we work on increasing your overall independence in the things that you like to do. So if you're a person who likes to knit and you had an injury, fine motor injury to your hands, we will work on rehabilitating those hands so you can resume the ability to continue knitting. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what we do.
Okay. So when you first start working with a client, I would assume that you spend some time kind of finding out what their interests are, what their
Yes.
daily routines were like, and which ones they're struggling with so that you can put together a treatment plan based
Yes.
on what's personalized to them, right?
Correct. Initially, there's an assessment that is completed, which comprises of their medical conditions, their medications that they may be taking, because that does affect their ability to function, and also it can comprise of their functional mobility, whether they can walk, whether they walk only a short distance, their strength. We check things like their vitals, blood pressure, stuff like that. So it's a comprehensive assessment so we can get an idea of what we need to work on. And then also, aside from what we see, we also ask the client, okay, what are the primary things you want to work on? So, for example, if we found 5 things that needed to be assessed or worked on, we narrow it down to the ones that are most important to them so that they have some continuity of it.
Right. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the assessment,
Okay.
because as a contractor, I also do assessments, and as a
Oh, okay.
contractor, I'm trained to look at the home and to
Mm-hmm.
look at the features of the home. Are there steps getting in, or do we have a zero-step entry?
Right.
Are the doorways wide enough? Are
Mhm.
the floors slippery? Is there good lighting and all those kinds of things?
Right.
And you, as an OT, are primarily focused on the person and their range of motion and what they can do and what they can't do.
Right.
But it's where those two factors intersect, really, is where we're looking for solutions,
Okay.
right?
That is
Because
correct.
a lot of the aging in place checklists that you see in the marketplace look at all those features of the home. And just because you check off all the things on the checklist doesn't mean that it's really going to work for a
Right,
particular
exactly.
patient, right? And
Yes.
so I think that it's important to work together and find out. I would come to you and say, okay, what's this person's needs? Oh, they've had a stroke. Their left side is not functioning properly, or
Mm-hmm.
they're weaker in the afternoon than they are in the morning, or they struggle with cognition, or that all of the different things that would help me as a contractor look at the house and say, oh, okay, well, we need grab bars, we need wider doorways, we need all those kinds of things. So how
It.
do you in
Mhm.
your market and in your work work with other providers in trying to create the very best environment for your patients?
Okay. We work a lot with not just the providers, but also family members. But we get referrals, for example, from, let's say, maybe a doctor or a social worker. When the family's at home, maybe they've fallen and stuff like that. So when we come on the scene, before we even get on the scene, we do a call. In that 15-minute consultation call, the family or whoever referred the person, or even maybe the person, is going to indicate to us, okay, this is what's going on as far as have they fallen? Are they weaker? What do they need to work on in their desire to stay at home and be independent? So once we get that information, then we go from there with the home assessment. During the home assessment, we're checking things throughout the homes from outside the home as far as their entryway. Do they have stairs? Do they have handrails? What's the height of the steps? These sort of things. We are going in the homes, checking the bathrooms. So is it a walk-in shower with grab bars? For folks who are concerned about whether they may slip due to the surface of the flooring, we look at things like that. We look at maybe installing handheld showers or fold-down shower benches. Depend on the space, what we can do, whether it's installing something permanently or just placing something there initially, which will be something like a shower chair, for example, as opposed to installing an actual built-in shower bench. Um, Whether it's a walk-in tub, walk-in shower, or a step-over tub. So we look at all these different things. For example, in the bathroom, the height of the toilet, whether we need to change out the toilet, make it a higher one, lower one, depending on the clientele. Because a lot of times people say, let's make the toilet higher. But if you have a shorter client, it's not going to work for them. So we have to take that into consideration. Um, in the kitchen, we look at whether we need to install like pull down cabinet handles, where the placements of your items are in the kitchen, not just the fact that you may have cupboards and cabinets, but can the person reach those safely with their grip strength? Are they able to hold the cabinets, open up items, stuff like that? On the stairs, are they at risk for falls with these stairs? Do we need to install stair raises or like handrails, stair lifts, these sort of things to help with that? In the living room, a lot of times folks have rugs that are impeding their ability to safely ambulate in that space. So we looked, okay, do we need to pull that up? Is there carpeting that is affecting their ability to safely navigate in their environment? So we may remove those things. Or it could be a matter of having a perfectly good home set up, but then it's cluttered. So do we need to remove the items that are in the walkway that are tripping hazards, even electrical wires, stuff like that? As back to the entryway, do we need to install a ramp as opposed to just having the steps? Is there elevator placement? Is it a modular ramp, or is it a ramp that is stationary? These are all the things we may look at. Also in the hallways, are the hallways wide enough for the wheelchair entry, for example, or the person that may need to get in and out of that space? Is there proper lighting in place so the person can see where they're going? And a lot of times, if you have motion sensor lights, those are good because they will just come on as you're in that environment. So it's good for the client. In places like the laundry room, do you have a front load laundry set up or top load? Sometimes some folks are not able to use the top load, but they can use the front load setup. It's much easier for them, so we may recommend changing stuff like that out. Even things like having smart home devices. A lot of times the thermostats could be set up on those, or the lighting, or even the alarm system and the door entry mechanisms, whether it's a smart entry or a keyed entry. Those things make a difference depending on the person's dexterity and cognitive abilities. So we look at a variety of things inside and outside the home.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. How often do you get pushback from clients when you recommend a certain change and maybe it's their favorite throw rug that you think is a tripping hazard and but great Aunt Martha gave that to me
Right.
40 years ago and I'm not moving it. How often does that happen and how do you deal with
It happens, I would say, if I had to give it a number, maybe 50% of the time. And a lot of times, what I would do is incorporate the family into this discussion so that they can also advise, because I never want to say like convince the client, but advise the client like this is a good idea. But also, I point out, I say to the client, okay, this is your favorite rug, for example. All right, show me how you safely navigate within this space. And if they may have done like have a little trip, I'd say this is primarily one of the reasons why we want to remove this. Or if they have a slight difficulty raising their foot when they're walking, I'm like, there's a likelihood that you may have a fall because of these things. So I point out the little things as they're doing it so that they're not thinking that I'm just making things up. They see it for themselves. They recognize, okay, there's some imbalanced issues or balance issues that are affecting their safety as they move. And so we could provide maybe not total removal of rugs altogether, but try a different rug as a compromise or just try a different flooring setup. It just depends. But a lot of the times, the clients are more receptive if it's apparent to them that it was their idea. If you make it seem like it was your idea, that you're the one trying to convince them, there's a lot of pushback. But I use wording like, okay, you desire to remain in your home, so how are we gonna make this happen? What can we do to make you safe at home? What do we need to do so you can stay here for X amount of years? And then I break it down in smaller pieces from there.
Right. Yeah, I think we all have to have a bit of psychologist in us
Yes,
to deal
certainly.
with these clients. I think there's a lot of that. I've seen a lot of that in family dynamics. You have the grown children, and they're coming from a place of genuine concern,
Yes, yes.
but they want to take away all the freedom of the person. And I think that maintaining freedom and autonomy and letting people make decisions about their life is important. Now, that's an important part of being human and
Yeah.
to balance being concerned for their safety and allowing them the freedom to have autonomy and make decisions in their life sometimes can be a very delicate
It
balance.
is a delicate balance, but it's achievable and sometimes too, it might not be that time. Like when you do the assessment, it may not be during that time where you make actual changes. Some of the changes might be implemented, but some they're resistant to, and then down the line they're more open to it because something might have happened, or
Right.
something happened to a neighbor and it freaks them out. Like the neighbor fell on that rug and broke their hip, so they're like, oh, so things like that. Unfortunately, sometimes that's what it takes. Something bad has to happen before they realize I really need this.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, most of the time when people are proactive, when people come to me and they say, we want to make some modifications to our home and, we're doing fine. We're not having any urgent needs right now, but we want to make those changes before we need them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are almost always people who have been caregivers because
Yes,
they've
yes,
seen what it feels like to be on the other side of the equation
yep.
and they say, I don't want to put my kids through that.
Light years ahead. Yep, I agree.
Exactly.
Being in the field
So,
we're
which
in,
is
we could see things that the average person will not see or notice. Yeah.
right, right, because until we're faced with something, we don't think about it. I mean, so many
Right.
times that we don't just think about these things. And how I got into aging in place space was my mother and father lived in Arizona for 15 years. My mom had a stroke.
Oh,
They moved
okay.
back to Virginia to be close to family, and I had to figure out how to get her in her wheelchair, up 7 steps into the house. So I built my
Wow.
wheelchair ramp, and then the doorways were kind of narrow, so we put in some swinkler hinges, and she was, her balance wasn't good, so we put in grab bars, and
Wow. Yep.
you when you're taking care of somebody you love and a family member, is often where, for the first time, we think about these
Yes.
issues,
Yes.
and so you are doing these services as your company, and is most of that private pay, or does insurance get involved? How do you get
There's a
compensated?
majority of private pay, but I do also have a Medicare billing available for those who are
Uh-huh.
choose that option. But yeah, majority is private pay. And at the moment, it's referral basis, or someone has reached out to me via my website, sent a message, or called. So that's how I get a lot of my clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So, and how long have you been in business?
it's only been 7 months in this for my own business, but as a therapist, over 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And so, looking back on that 7 months, are you happy you made the move? Do you wish you'd done it sooner? Is it anything surprising, or that maybe you weren't expecting?
I am certainly happy I made the move, like, and I do wish I did it sooner as opposed to now. Probably about, if I were to say, I would probably guess that if I did it 10 years ago, that would have been fantastic. What's surprising is how open people are to the possibility of staying in their home. Like some folks who never had an idea or thought that maybe they could stay in their home, they're now like, this is an option for me. So they're unaware of the options out there. I like the idea of being able to, even if they don't require my services, just to be able to educate them like this is a possibility for you. So those are things. And also, I am surprised at how many homes are not agent in place. They're not made for agent in place clients. They're terrible. So I thought for sure that it would be a lot more homes that are set up that way, but no. So I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, it drives me crazy because you will see developments that are ostensibly designed
Yes.
for aging residents. They're patio homes, they're garden homes, they're marketed,
Yeah.
to seniors. They're billed as retirement destinations, and then you show up and there's a step from the front porch into
Oh,
the
yeah.
house. There's
Right off
a
the bat.
step from the
Yeah.
garage into
Yes.
the house. There's big tall bathtubs, and you're like,
Yes.
what were they thinking?
They were
And
not.
some of that is just builders build the way they've always built,
Yes.
and until the marketplace demands something different, they're not going to build something different because that's what they know. And it's what I refer to as Peter Pan housing. It's for people that never grow old. And so I've been doing this, really focusing on aging in place since '08. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
been,
Okay.
what, 17 years. And I've seen a little bit of movement. Some of the newer homes now have wider doors.
That I have noticed,
So,
yes.
I mean, that's a start. We're starting to
Wider
see
doors
more
and
of
wider
that.
walkways. Those things I have noticed, yes.
Yeah. But as far as a zero step entry into the house from the front porch or from the garage, that's still relatively rare. And that's really um, the first obstacle. I mean, if you can't get in the house, how are you going to worry about anything else?
Exactly.
And,
And get in or
and
get out in the case of emergency or something, you know. I am reminded of my aunt who's in a 55 and up community, and it's, as you say, made for this, but there are no sidewalks. There's a step up into the home, nothing to hold on to, a tub that is a slippery hazard. The doorways are not even wide enough, you know? So I'm just like, how did they even make this and call it? It's a whole community.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's really strange. Even with amenities, like when you go to the pool area, it's not set up for someone who's older. It's set up for just an average person. So I'm just like, okay, average healthy person. So I'm not sure how they come up with their design, how they go through the process, but those things are very surprising to me
yeah.
for those
Well, yeah, you would
communities.
think a swimming pool at a senior community would have a beach entry. At the YMCA where I go, the family pool for kids, they have a beach entry into the pool. So it just
Yeah,
it's slowed
and it
down.
should be.
And it should. I mean, that would make sense,
Yeah.
you know. Same with the shower. We do a beach entry or a curbless shower. I mean, that's
Yes.
that's what we do. It's our standard offering, and it just makes so much sense. But going back for a moment to you talking about education, because I think education is so important, because one size does not fit all, and
Certainly not.
one solution does not fit everybody. But I think that the more people are educated about what their choices are and know the pros and cons of their different choices, the more informed decisions they can make. And the more people plan ahead and make these decisions before it's a crisis mode,
Yes, the better.
after you fall and break your hip, your choices are much more limited
Yes,
than if you are thinking ahead of time, how do I improve my balance? What are some exercises I can do to improve my balance? What are some maybe lifestyle or nutrition things that I can do to improve my overall health and my balance? And maybe prevent that fall in the first place.
exactly. Yeah. They always say, what is the saying? Prevention is better than cure, right? It works every time
Absolutely.
in every area. It's certainly
Yeah.
the, but I do find though those proactive folks are the best clients because they know, okay, boom, as you say, they're probably caregiver or have caregiver background, and they know, okay, I'm thinking 10, 15, 20 years down the road, this is what I need. My mind is made up, boom, let's just do it. Those ones I find are much easier to work with as far as get things from start to finish. It's the folks that
Definitely.
have been in the same home for like 40 years and everything down to, where they put their shoes is like set. They don't want to move or change anything. So those folks, on the other hand, are a lot more rigid. So with those folks, I do
Uh-huh.
like to provide options in the sense of like, okay, maybe we're not going to do this. Here are three possible options. Which one sounds best for you or works best for you? So narrow it down a little bit so it makes it easier for them to decide. It does help sometimes, but sometimes they're still resistant.
Yeah, yeah. And I've run into people that, they're not going to budge. And, they have that right if that's the way they want to be. But as professionals, our job is to try to point out the benefits of being proactive
Yeah.
and of
Yeah.
thinking ahead. And,
Facilitate as much as possible, but we cannot force folks.
no, and we shouldn't, I
No,
mean,
that's where
so
the autonomy comes in. So, that's a part of being home. You want to be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. So, yeah.
one of the things that I have thought about and espoused for many years is the idea that um, people would value a home assessment like you do in the same manner that people pay for a home inspection.
Mm,
When almost everybody, when they buy a house, they think nothing of spending, four, five, $600 on a home inspection
yes.
because they don't want to buy the house and then find out that there are major problems
Right.
that they weren't aware of. And I have found it, slow in most cases for people to see the value of an accessibility assessment in the same way. And
Very
I'm
true.
wondering if you see that as well, and if so, how do you position your services in a way that makes people more open to the idea of paying for that assessment?
I absolutely see that. They are very receptive and oh yeah, home assessment. Oh yeah, I'm gonna make sure there's no termites or hidden things behind walls. They are gun ho for that. But when it does come to the home assessment, as far as are we safe? Do we have everything set up in the way that will make sure that you can remain in this home for long duration? There's hesitancy. Another thing I do is I point out, okay, you're in this home. You are whatever the age may be. How does it look when you are 10 years? I start off with different years, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Do you perceive yourself to be stronger, the same, weaker? I point out these little things like that. And I ask the question in a way so that they can reflect and really think about it without me pushing my response or my answer to them. I just ask them so they can reflect on it. And then I also say, okay, so this home assessment may cost X amount of dollars. How much do you think it would cost if you fell and needed hospitalization, or you needed to be placed in a rehab facility in a nursing home, or if you just needed to get some equipment that's not covered by insurance or Medicare or Medicaid or whatnot? How much do you think it would cost? And then I break down the different costs based off of the average, and I show them like, okay, this is what a hospitalization costs. This is what if you had to stay in a nursing home for rehab for 6 to 8 weeks, perhaps if you had a hip injury, this is what it would cost if you even needed to have to provide home care. And the cost of those services or those things are substantially more than the cost of a home assessment and doing preventative things like balance and strengthening exercises, in the home assessment, making changes amongst the homes. So once they see things like that, they're like, I didn't think about it like that, but that is a good point. And then, of course, having the family involved as well, so they could also see the big picture helps. But yeah, it is
Yeah.
that initial part of it where like, oh, I don't think I need this, da da da. Because sometimes I receive calls from the family member, not the actual client, and the client themselves are like, oh, I'm fine, da 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 da, no problems. But the family member is saying, my mom fell 3 times. She didn't injure herself, but she thinks she's okay. They're telling me little things that mom would never say. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I get the full picture, which is a lot more holistic picture. And with that, I can do these things. And it helps a great deal if I have the family member who's backing me and they know that's someone that loves them and cares about them. And they're not going to want something that's bad for them. So they're like, okay, I'm willing to listen. That's the first thing. And then they're like, okay, I'm willing to try something simple. And then we just build up from there. So we try this. How was that? Oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Okay. How about we try this next thing? And we just kind of gradually increase it. So that
Right.
seems to have
Yeah.
been working. So I like that.
Yeah. Well, there's that psychology again,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah. And I've seen too
Within the
where,
framework of their autonomy. So, yeah.
where the family member will say, I've tried to talk some sense into mom, or I've tried to, convince her and she won't listen to me. And,
Yeah.
that's a whole role reversal thing. The mom's like, don't you tell me what to do. I'm the
Yes.
parent here.
Yes.
And then sometimes you can come in as the expert,
Yes.
right? You've been trained, you've got degrees, you've got credentials, and you can come in and then maybe they will listen to you when they wouldn't listen to their child.
I've had that happen as
And
well. Yep.
right.
So,
So, but really the thing I like about, this line of work is that really the opportunity to help people and the opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life. We go into jobs where people they haven't been able to take a shower in 2 years because they couldn't get in
yeah.
the tub, take out the tub, put in a shower, or, we just, and the caregivers who have been, maybe they injured their shoulder, probably trying to lift, their loved one
Yeah.
because they couldn't get around. And so many times your services are helping the caregiver as much or more than the patient.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
how much you see that.
Yeah. I agree. And a lot of education for both folks. And it is eye-opening sometimes because the caregivers are thinking, oh, I'm fine. It's just my husband or it's just my wife or my mom or whatnot, I'm fine. But then they don't realize that they're getting burnt out. When was the last time you took a moment to relax, to go get your hair done, to go for a walk around the block? They are so consumed with being a caregiver that they don't even realize that they're neglecting themselves until you point out these things like, okay, these are the things that are happening. This is how this is affecting you. How can we make this better? They're shocked
Yeah.
sometimes as to what's going on with them, even though they're in it, they
Right.
still don't see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So where do you see maybe the industry changing over the next few years? Do you have any thoughts about um, what you see coming down the pike, or changes that maybe you think would be helpful or would be necessary?
oh, I would love it if homes were just built with the mindset of okay, aging in place, period. Like, we're talking about no having no steps. Like that's just a no-brainer. Just start from there. I would love to have more collaborations where you have healthcare professionals with the contractors collaborating on things that will help folks stay in the home and just not throwing up these for throwing them up quickly and all that. It would be wonderful if more folks would be educated and also more homes will be built with that in mind. So it's a
Yeah.
uphill battle though, because you have generations after generations who have been building this. My granddad did it this way, my father, and the resistance to change is a thing. I think with the understanding that if you make these simple changes from the get-go, it will benefit in the long run. If you're that kind of a builder who starts with these things as their basic, like their standard, and folks, they learn, okay, I can go to builder X because this is how they normally build things. This is their standard. So I don't have to worry about what's going to happen 5 years, 10 years down the road if I have a fall because it's already built the way I needed it to be built. So I would love for that to
Right.
be the future of home modifications or home building. But I think it needs to start from the top, with greater education, as I said, but also having the folks who are making the laws, the rules, make those changes. Just as they make changes as far as like, okay, back in the day, the dimensions of XYZ had to be this way. They make changes over the years. They can do those same changes when it comes to agent in place changes.
They can, and I think there's some movement in that direction. But my perspective is that I think that coming from the bottom up, where it's driven by consumer demand,
Well,
which comes
yes.
back to education,
Yes.
right? If we can as an industry collaborate, going back to what you said about collaboration, the
Mm-hmm.
more that we can work together and maybe in your community build a network of other, contractors, other therapists, other maybe transportation, because that's another huge part of the
Oh, yes.
equation.
Yes.
When people aren't able to drive anymore, how do they get around? Take the time and make the effort to educate people, which is I'm trying to do in my community, is find partners and network and do some community events and do some educational events and just get people thinking about these things so that they're demanding when somebody's going shopping for a new home, when somebody's talking to a new home builder, when somebody's talking to a community, and they're asking for these features, then that's going to drive demand, which will then cause change
You are right. You're
in a
certainly
much
correct on
more
it.
organic way than mandates. Because a lot of times when things are mandated, it's like ADA. People all the time think, oh, well, I need to make my home ADA
Yeah.
compliant. People don't realize that ADA applies to places of public accommodation. It applies to, commercial and public buildings.
Yes.
ADA doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for that particular
Exactly. Because
client.
everyone's
It's a
client,
bunch of
it's specific to what the client needs.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's driven by demand rather than by mandate, then ultimately we get a better result. Now, maybe it takes longer, takes more effort across the board, but I
But
much
you're
prefer
correct.
to see
You
demand.
are correct with that. I agree wholeheartedly. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I
Supply.
think as the society ages and we have a larger and larger percentage of people who are, of an advanced age, then the more that there's going to be that demand. Not that accessibility and mobility problems can't happen at any age, because they can. I mean, obviously people are born with conditions that make it difficult for them.
Hmm.
Other people get in accidents at any age,
Yes.
but clearly in the older age groups it's more prevalent.
Noticing though, because if you think back to the older generation, they're far more active as far as you're going to walk to the store, a few blocks. You're not going to drive as opposed to now. There's certain things they were doing that was a lot more, they naturally were more active. Now you have folks who are sitting in front of a television or a video game or on their phone or they drive everywhere. So their level of activity is decreased significantly. So a 40-year-old back in the day versus a 40-year-old or even a 20-year-old back in the day versus a current 20-year-old is significantly different as far as even their functional mobility. So I'm noticing that the younger people are not as mobile as they used to be. So in line with what you're saying, things have changed, and it's not just for the elderly. That's why I like the idea of the agent in place for all, so everyone benefits, not just the persons who maybe needed it
Right.
at that very moment, but everyone in the
Right.
house benefits.
Yeah, we have to be intentional nowadays to be active.
Yes.
It used to be that was, it was just life. You had to walk everywhere,
Yeah.
or bicycle or what have you. So you got your exercise that way.
Yes.
But now we have to choose to, and I just turned 63,
Oh, wow.
and
Nice.
I am going next week. My wife and I are going on a 77-mile hike on the foothill
Wow,
trail on the border of
nice.
North and South Carolina. And you know that idea that you're as young as you believe you are and you're
Hmm.
going to be as mobile as you choose to be is to me a very important part of the equation.
I agree.
Because a lot of people have the attitude, you know, I worked 40 years of my life and now I'm retired and I'm going to just take it easy. And they
Yes.
sit back in their recliner and put their feet up and they
Their body,
decline pretty
their muscles
quickly.
just atrophy, and they're wondering what
They
happened.
do. They
That's
do.
what
And
we
that's
were.
not, and so,
Mm.
um, you know,
But
just being
77,
in
you said 77 miles?
77 miles
Oh,
on the trails. Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
impressive. Okay.
Yeah. We did it. We did 175 miles in Vermont last summer.
What? Oh my goodness. Oh, that
Yeah.
is awesome.
But it's very, to me, it's very relaxing. Get out in nature
Oh
and
yeah.
just kind of get away from the phone, get here,
Yes.
all of the,
Disconnect with
you know,
nature. We can reconnect with ourselves, not just the
yeah.
nature, but ourselves. I agree. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that sounds like a great trip.
Yeah. So what have I missed? Anything that
What have you
you
missed? We covered quite a bit. Let me think. Off the top, I cannot think of anything we've missed. I think we've covered a great deal.
okay? Well, tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want you know, more information on, you know, your services or to find out more about what you're doing.
All right. You can reach me at homesafetyconsultant.com. That's homesafetyconsultant.com. I'm also, you can find me on Google. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube under the same name, Home Safety Consultant. Call me. Seven, should I list my number? Seven, okay. You can reach me at 772 36798. So
Great.
I'm available at your call or email me
All right.
at safelayout@gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much, Kanisha, for being here, and I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you all the best going forward,
Thank
and
you so much.
see way more collaboration, you know, in the future, all the way across the board amongst different providers, because I think we can provide a higher level of service to our clients, the more we work together and collaborate.
It's my pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much for the invite. I appreciate it, and I agree. We need to collaborate and get this ball rolling. Let's move the needle a little bit so more folks can be safe in their home and increase their independence and be just do what they want to do safely,
Yeah,
basically. So
there you
yes.
go.
So thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great day.
You too. Ciao.